Check. I'm here. All right, welcome. This is the Genesee County Compassion Club show. Glad to be here in the Flint Talk studios, flinttalkradio.com, broadcasting you live from Ustream.tv. Man, it's cold here in Flint. Another 20, 25 degree day.
Actually, he says 29 officially.
Oh, wow. It's a lot warmer than I thought.
The sun did raise it up a little bit. The sun's been out for a couple hours.
Hey, what's up with the city of Flint not plowing the streets?
That's how they're saving money.
Oh, okay.
They gotta have real, they got real concerns. They gotta bail out their city councilmen and stuff, pay for their legal fees, stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I'm out in the country, and all the side roads are plowed and everything, and then I get all the way down here in the city of Flint, and the roads aren't plowed at all, ever.
It's a crime reduction attempt, so you keep them slowed down. They just can't get away from the cops, frequently. So.
Oh, I see the strategy now. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So, anyways, glad to be here from Flint today, and glad to have the weather. I don't mind the snow; it's really not that bad. But hey, we got some news for you coming from the Genesee County Compassion Club. Got some information about medical marijuana and some other cannabis-related items here in the news this week. So I wanted to share that with you. Things have been going good down at the club. Glad to be there. Everything's running smooth. We've got this Friday coming up. Little Christmas celebration for those of you interested, for you club members out there. Stop by if you can after 6 o'clock, or anytime really, but especially after 6 on Friday. Got a potluck going on, so bring a dish to pass if you want to eat. And then we're going to have some games going on. Little White Elephant gift exchange. There's a $10 maximum on that, and it should be lots of fun. So that'll be this Friday down at the club. Look forward to seeing you guys there. And I know that our club is loaded with individuals who are amazing cooks. And you can come down there and have some fantastic food. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. So stop by on Friday if you can. And we'd love to see you there, that's for sure. But, man, I know I'm looking forward to it. My mouth's already watering thinking about it. It's going to be delicious. But hey, I do have some news for you here this week. Some different things that have come up regarding cannabis and medical marijuana around the United States. And just wanted to be able to share with some of that with you guys. As far as other events going down at the Compassion Club, pretty much just going to be chilling for the next couple weeks. Got Christmas coming up obviously next Wednesday, so there won't be any podcasts for the next couple weeks as we got Christmas and New Year's. But I hope you guys have a safe holidays. Hopefully everybody's all ready for it, and get that shopping done, last minute stocking stuffers, all those good things. Hopefully you've already accomplished that. If not, your time's ticking, that's for sure. But hey, I got some news for you here that I do want to share. There's an article I was checking out. This is about Massachusetts. If you didn't or are already aware, they have a medical marijuana law in Massachusetts, and they had recently, this last year, approved a dispensary law allowing state licensing of different distribution centers across the state. The estimate is for up to 35 different dispensaries to be licensed across Massachusetts. And the interesting thing here is they have some different analysts get together, try to gauge what the estimated financial market for this medical marijuana will be in the state of Massachusetts. And I thought this was quite intriguing. They had anywhere from $5 to $80 million projected for the medical marijuana industry through these 35 different dispensaries.
What's the population of Massachusetts?
I'm really not too sure about that.
It's about comparable to Michigan, I would think.
Really?
Size, yeah, so it's
You'd think with it being such a smaller state that it wouldn't be as...
Well, yeah, but it's more prosperous. I mean, not prosperous, but it's got a lot of taxation, but so it's prosperous that way, and they support a lot of things. So I know people live there, and it's a nice place to live, but in some ways, but not for gun rights or. But my observation is going to be that I think that one or two individuals are going to be really cleaning up financially. I think there's a lot of cronyism going on here with that 35. That's a small number, I think.
I think a lot of times they base that out on different populations, and then they're going to be basing it on, making sure that they're spread out throughout the state. The initial number of 35, obviously it's going to be subject to change in the future. They may look at adding or decreasing that number just based on demand. And I do know that they take, things like population into account. I'm just looking it up here, Massachusetts population. Yeah, I guess you're right, John. It's not too much different. The estimated population back for the 2013 census was 6.6 million. So not too much smaller than Michigan as far as population goes. certainly geographically, it's quite a bit smaller of a state than Michigan.
Yeah,
but
Michigan actually is a few miles bigger than this, in the entire UK. Not the Ireland obviously, but Scotland and England together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's bigger than this. Michigan is bigger in geographical size.
Yeah, I mean, we're a good-sized state by geographics. I mean, obviously, you're spread out quite a bit. The population's gone down in Michigan. You look at back in, I think it was the 2000 census, we were around 10 million, and the last one was like just under 9. So, I mean, that's a 10% decrease in population over a 10-year period. It's pretty significant.
I think we're the only state in the union that's actually lost population. Everybody else might have had aging population died off, but they had resurgence of incoming people from other states or new countries. But no, that doesn't happen here.
Yeah, and I don't think that the decrease in Michigan was due to people dying off per se. I think it was due to a mass exodus of people looking for work. I know a lot of people left the state looking for jobs in other areas, and they were able to find those. Unfortunately, it was out of state. But at any rate, when it comes back to the financial opportunity here for the medical marijuana market in Massachusetts, they're estimating quite a broad range here, between 5 and 80 million. It's quite a spread, obviously. I mean, you could just pick in between and say 42 million or something like that would be the more expected outcome. But they're basing this on what their average visitation to a dispensary may be, somewhere in the neighborhood. I saw one estimate might be to the number of like around 50 different patients visiting a dispensary daily, with an estimate of like a $90 expenditure for each one of those people. And that was from the guys who own Harborside. Run the large dispensary out there in California. And I know that they're actually one of the places that are looking to open up a branch in Massachusetts. So that's their business estimate. And, I think at any rate, that's a big market. You take something that was zero before, and now all of a sudden you look at a $40 million business or industry just popping up because they changed the laws. That's a pretty significant increase. We get happy when we hear about increases in the Flint area, and sometimes it's as small as just a handful of jobs being added to the market. How many jobs do you think is going to come out of that? And that's $40 million approximate that are just from the sale of medical cannabis. You have to think about what about all of the ancillary business that's going to go along with that.
Well, like I know in Flint, there's supposed to be the Old International Institute is supposed to be used by Genesee for an elderly care center, and they estimate that's going to be 70 jobs connected to that, and that's like a big shot in the arm for the Flint, the Flint area. 70 jobs is quite a bit.
Yeah, and that's the thing, John. That's kind of the point I'm making is 70 jobs. It's nothing to scoff at, but when you consider the thousands of people that are on unemployment in this area, it really doesn't make that big of a dent. And how many jobs will this equate to in Massachusetts? You're looking at $40 million of income or revenue from the business there, and then, like I said, that's just from the sales of medical marijuana itself. Obviously, you're going to have up to 35 different businesses now housing their stores, so that's different places being rented out, income created from that, and then of course you'll have all the products go along with the medical marijuana use. From indoor grows or outdoor grows to products themselves that patients use to ingest their medication. So I think that'd be a big shot in the arm for their economy out there.
Probably a couple $100 million if you add it all up, and plus people visiting there and stuff like that, maybe to get like training or something like that. Who knows? There's a lot of money possibly there.
I think some of the big numbers there are going to come from, just like any industry, a lot of times the ancillary parts of the business make more money than the business itself. And I think that's no different here in this industry as well. But yeah, I mean, shoot, if you have $40 million from medical marijuana sales generated in a market that previously was zero, certainly going to have some impact and revenue growth there. Definitely a big change for the economy out there. And I think it's something we have to look at here in Michigan. We have the bills that were just passed this last week in the House that would allow cultivation centers across the state to be licensed if their local authorities choose to do so, through proper regulation and so forth. Obviously, I think that could be a big plug in the arm for some businesses here in Michigan. So it'd be interesting to take a look at that and see what the impact is. I certainly think that Michigan's had a big shot in the arm, a big growth, if you will, from medical marijuana. You've got 50,000 caregivers, well over 100,000 patients in this state. Certainly there's been a lot of business that has popped up because of this. And it's something that I think is unfortunate that our state really hasn't put a report out on, that we haven't really seen a well-documented research done on this here in Michigan as what the economic impact has been in the 4 or 5 years that we've had this program. I'd like to see some numbers behind that.
Yeah, I think just licensing alone was like $7 or $10 million, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean licensing alone. So, and another thing is that kind of I'm going to toot your horn here for if you got like 100,000 patients, Genesee County Compassion Club is. You got over 9,000 members, don't you?
Yeah, I think we're just shy of 10,000 members.
So you guys got a crow about that. I mean, out of 100,000 people, a good chunk of them belong to the Compassion Club that you head up.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, we're very fortunate to be able to be there and to be one of the the first Compassion Club in the state. Certainly, that makes our membership numbers more plausible. When a lot of places haven't been around as long as the club has been. But yeah, I mean, our membership continues to grow. And I think that's a testament to how the club operates and then to the need of the patients and caregivers to have a place to go to. And I think that's just a testament, like I said, to how the club operates. We're not a dispensary. We're not there dispensing medication. We're just creating a safe place for people to come in and meet each other. And I think that hopefully there should be more places like that around the state. Now that they have provisioning centers being allowed, that might be a different type of an operation than what we are, but maybe more places would be likely to allow places like the Compassion Club to operate, seeing that they might have a little bit more confidence that there's provisioning centers going on now. Maybe we could allow at least a Compassion Club in our area, maybe in places that aren't as friendly to the medical marijuana movement. But at any rate, I mean, this is you have to take a look at the economic impact of this. It certainly is significant. Like I said, I really love to see some sort of study come out just for Michigan to see what the impact has been. John, you mentioned the licensing fees. I think they're well over $10 million now that the state's received itself just from the application fees for medical marijuana.
I bet you that Massachusetts is concerned about too, because they call that taxatusis. They love taxation in Massachusetts, which is ironic because that was a group where years and years ago they went against a 3-cent tax on tea.
Right.
Tax stamps and stuff like that.
The Tea Party. The original Tea Party.
The original one, the one in Boston Harbor. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, to each their own, and at least they're doing some sort of provisioning there for patients. I think it's good that they're getting that rolling, and I think it's information like this that's going to help make that positive impact, make it a plausibility for the state. People look at that and say, okay, this is even if they're not affected by medical marijuana directly, they don't have a family member or themselves, don't have a need for it, they can see that this could be a positive injection into their state's fiscal matters. It's a good thing. And being regulated and so forth, I think people can feel comfortable knowing that it's going to be safe and it's going to be distributed in a safe manner, so it goes into the correct hands and so forth. Rather than just having to be out on the street sort of a thing.
I hear people say that, their concerns for the medical marijuana, they want to make sure it's in a safe manner. Then I crack up because I've known so many people personally that died of oxy addiction, died of it. They died of it, taking overdoses of that stuff. Yeah, nobody's concerned about those damn things as much as they are about weed. And it was like, okay, I don't know anybody who's OD'd ever on marijuana. Never.
It doesn't happen. Yeah. Certainly not. And I think that's a lot of the perceptions. If something is illegal, a lot of folks will deem it as being dangerous just because of that. They won't really take a look at the actual material itself to consider whether or not it is dangerous or not.
I don't know if you know this. Maybe it's a kind of odd point to bring up, but during the time of the King George reign in England, he had so many things that prohibited to bring in, even just like cloth, because it was made in other countries, and they thought that'd be giving the advantage to the enemy, import cloth from their countries and stuff like that. Well, when he was actually, coronated, the robes that he wore were actually made up of materials that he and his family's bands actually prohibited from coming into England, and his tailors had to go through illegal sources to get the stuff brought in. So let's face it, I don't know clothing ever being a dangerous thing really, per se. You know what I mean? It's taxation doesn't even have to anything to do with what effect it might have negative on it in a society. It's just that they can control it and they can bring money out, get money out of it.
Yeah. Well, as we continue to see laws and regulations pass, I think you're going to see that people are more leaning towards we should better regulate this, and then that way at least we can benefit from it. The folks that want to have taxation and so forth. All right, I do have some other info I want to share with you. There's an article here. It was kind of interesting. Let me pull this up here for you, if I could find it. All right, this is a long-term or long-going myth that's gone along with marijuana use. I've heard it repeated many times and cited by different politicians and so forth. And one of the side effects that they say marijuana may cause is schizophrenia. This is something, like I said, that's been debated for quite a while. Always been rumored, sort of like an urban myth thing. If you smoke weed, you might end up schizophrenic, or it may lead to that. This was published from Harvard Medical School. New research that was documented. It was a comparison between families with a history of schizophrenia and those without. The study found little support for marijuana use as a cause of schizophrenia. The results of the current study suggested that having an increased familial morbid risk for schizophrenia may be the underlying basis for that, rather than the cannabis being the factor. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I mean, it's a broad-based study here. Like I said, they're comparing families with the history of schizophrenia and those without. But basically, through that study, they found that really, no, there is not a link between cannabis use and schizophrenia. So it's kind of nice, having that come from Harvard Medical School, certainly a reputable source. They recruited over 282 subjects, and so it's a pretty extensive survey there. But at any rate, it kind of puts that urban myth to rest, if you will.
Matter of fact, I knew schizophrenics who actually had less severe manifestations of the symptoms by smoking weed. I know them personally. They would smoke weed and marijuana, and they wouldn't have that. They wouldn't have those type of the thoughts wouldn't be there and stuff like that.
So you're saying like actually may have alleviated some of the symptoms associated with schizophrenia?
I've known more than probably 24 schizophrenics in my own lifetime.
Wow.
And some who did self-medicate, they had smoked marijuana before that, then they were diagnosed that they're having these problems, they're on the medications, and they went back to smoked a joint with one of their friends, and then noticed that after that diminished the intensity or the thoughts and stuff like that, so they actually would self-medicate with marijuana. Of course, they stayed on the drugs that the doctor prescribed, but they said that they attributed the de-intensification to marijuana rather than the other prescription drugs. So, I mean, I've seen that. And also, I've seen people who have had actually found out they had other disorders because of smoking marijuana slowed their brain down enough to see that there was gaps in information. One of my friends found out that she was actually have a form of epilepsy from smoking marijuana. She saw that there was gaps, and then she went back and started. They did testing, and they found out she did indeed had a form of petit mal seizures going on.
Wow.
Yeah. So I see. I mean that this is overwhelming evidence to me on a personal level and anecdotal level, but that's all medical science is on basically. Mm-hmm. People reporting stuff. If you might want to put in a scientific setting, it is anecdotal information. That's all it is.
Yeah.
You just try to compile as much of it from a widespread population as possible, and that's what you take that and you start looking for common threads.
Well, and there's so many different rumors that have been put out there regarding cannabis use, and they were really rumors that were put out there just to deter people, to stir up fear, and get people to if you do use cannabis, well, you're going to end up crazy. There was the rumor back when cannabis was first outlawed that cannabis would make you racist. So I think that a lot of times, certain ones, they don't need to have any type of research to simply say it's hodgepodge, But something like this, schizophrenia, enough people have latched onto this myth to sort of give it a credence that it isn't deserved. And so I think it's nice to have something like Harvard Medical School come out and say, no, that's not the case.
Now, LSD has been connected to people who have a predisposition towards schizophrenia having the manifestation going on after use of LSD. Now, I've seen that happen more times than I don't even want to count on a personal level.
Sure.
I know probably 4 cases offhand where somebody dropped acid and later on became, but also then you look at their family's history and background, there was 2 or 3 schizophrenics in that family, far enough back. They didn't call it then perhaps, but they had like the same behaviors coming from schizophrenic. And so now they label it schizophrenia.
Yeah, different diagnosis, but same symptoms. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things. If you want to classify drugs, I think you could clearly classify LSD as being a dangerous drug, and to have marijuana lumped in with that, like on the federal drug scheduling, there's just no good sense behind that. There's really no comparison between the two as far as the effects that it has on the person that's consuming it, and also the side effects that could be derived from that drug use. I mean, LSD is certainly, I don't think anybody out there is proposing medical LSD.
Medical establishment themselves did back in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah. Well, that was that Timothy Leary or something like that?
Well, no, they actually, Cary Grant, the actor Cary Grant, went to a psychiatrist who actually tried to use LSD for treatment of different types of disorders like manic depression or bipolar disorder or whatever.
Huh.
And so there are a lot of these guys are passing that on like they were M&Ms.
Wow.
For almost a lot of things. And that was the establishment of the medical community at that time.
Huh.
Like cocaine was supposed to be a preventative, it's a cure-all for heroin addiction, morphine addiction and stuff. So,
well, now I have heard of cannabis being used as a way to help people with morphine or other types of like opiate-based addictions, and actually I've heard it's quite effective.
I've heard that too. And as a matter of fact, I have a friend of mine. Again, I know a lot of people went through abuse counseling. Okay, and that's what they used, and they're weaning themselves off their heroin addiction.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, there was a study that recently came out, and it was I think it was done in Florida, but it was based on people being able to use cannabis along with their other prescribed opiate pain managing type medications, and they found that people using cannabis in conjunction were actually able to stave off a lot of the need for that increased use of the opiates. It was found to be synergistic with each other, and that way it was more effective for combating the pain, and then therefore patients were able to take less of the opiate-based medication, and in some cases not have to take it for as long of a period to help out with their ailments. So, I mean, I think that when doctors look at using cannabis as a part of their treatment program, that's something that could be very effective in helping them with their pain management patients. You have some people that are completely dependent on their opiate prescriptions so that they can get through the day. But the problem is you find that people are constantly increasing their dosage, and it doesn't really have the effect that it did initially. But if they're able to combine that with cannabis use, through a controlled manner, I think that they'll find that it can be more effective for their pain management. I would prefer, doctors take a look at this so that they could see, what is the best method of dealing with this, and instead of just ruling out altogether. We've had a lot of cases here in Michigan where opiate patients or pain management patients have gone in and said, well, I am using cannabis, and so they've been cut off from their prescriptions. The doctor no longer felt comfortable in dealing with them, so he said, I'm done dealing with you. You're going to have to go somewhere else for your pain management. I don't think that that's obviously the best method for dealing with patients. Certainly they probably will go somewhere else and get what it is that they're looking for, but if they had a doctor that was more willing to take a look at this from a whole perspective, they could probably find out a better way of taking care of their patients. I know a number of my patients I've dealt with that do have opiate prescriptions have found that they're better able to manage their use of those, have been able to cut back on their use of them, and they're finding that the combined usage is a better effect, so that they can take less of one and then have a synergistic effect. So obviously it's a good thing there for their management. All right, I got a couple other articles here I wanted to share with you. I'm trying to find this one here. The computer will cooperate for me. This is more on a little friendly note here. This was cannabis helps dogs and cats. In Washington State, there's a veterinarian that has been using cannabis for their dogs and cats. Now, the one thing they were saying is that high THC products are not good for your dog and your cat. It's basically it can have an overwhelming effect on your pet. You don't want them to be paranoid or stressed out because they took too much of your medicine. But the veterinarian here in Washington was able to combine parts of the other parts of the plant, like part of the stalk, part of the fan leaves, that have lowered amounts of THC in them, but still retain some of the other types of cannabinoids that are in there, and was able to come up with a product that has been actually working quite well for their pet. These products contain more of the phytocannabinoids, the flavonoids, the terpenes, and they've come up with this product called Cannapet. But at any rate, it has a very low THC amount in it, 0.3% is what was tested in them. And they did a little bit of a test and showed that 100% of their dogs and their cats' reaction was positive. It had anti-inflammatory properties to it that were very helpful. And some of the animals there that were treated showed amazing results at within 24 hours. So there was a couple of animals that had bruised vertebrae. One was keeping a dog almost paralyzed, couldn't move around, and within 24 hours the dog was up and moving around after using the Canapet product. So that's kind of interesting. I mean, I've actually heard stories within our own club of people using this in a medicinal manner for their pets, and they have had helpful or positive benefits to it. Like I said, anti-inflammation, we know that cannabis is good for that. So why wouldn't it work in another mammal? So kind of cool. But check that out, Canapet. Obviously, it's a small dose amount for the pet. And heck, I mean, if it's working in other places where other medications wouldn't work, I think that's pretty cool.
Imagine a paranoid dog, getting too high the THC levels, paranoid dog on your head.
Well, I guess in a more serious sense, yeah, I can. I mean, I think that you could see a dog that could get stressed out, maybe vomit from it. It would be an unpleasant situation. Certainly, you're trying to do something to help your friendly animal out. Especially if you're trying to use it for anti-inflammation or pain management to some degree for the animal. I mean, you're not trying to make it suffer or just goof around with it. So so you should be careful. I mean, if you tried to self-medicate your dog or cat at home, take caution. And like I said here, this product here is developed by a veterinarian. And, they're going through lengths to make sure that the animal isn't receiving something that's going to make it all paranoid or scared. They're giving it a product that contains low levels of THC, derived from, like I said, from the stalks or stems of the plant. And they're combining it in a manner that the animal can ingest.
Well, another thing is, it's a mammalian's, physiology for a dog as well as we are. So I wonder if they have in their brain, though, the cannabinoid receptors that, that we do. I mean, to the level.
I think it's proven that all mammals have cannabinoid receptors to some degree.
So it makes sense then. I mean, I can understand why that is just a good fit for something that the body's already set up to handle.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just people always made more of a joke of it in the past. And, if you look at the medicines now that your animals can get prescribed at the veterinarian's office, oftentimes they are kind of very similar to what you would see prescribed for a human.
Antibiotics for certain, yeah.
Certainly, but in even dealing more with pain management, there's almost like a doggy form of Vicodin, But I think that it makes sense, and it's probably safer for them. But I just advise caution. If you have an animal at home and you were thinking about trying this out, you want to make sure that you're not trying to get your dog too high in a sense. I mean, you don't want it to be. You don't want to exasperate the problem, obviously, but I think it just is a testament to how universal cannabis use can be.
I just found out tip. I watched this video yesterday at YouTube last night about this vet who advocates cooking your own food for your own dogs and avoiding all these commercial brands altogether. And so he just one tip. So if you're going to use this your commercial stuff, put just a thing half a teaspoon of olive oil in the food. Saw that my dog I did that for my dog, and she's already ate her bowl of food right down to to just devoured the entire bowl. So I mean, I just got information last night that my dog seems to be benefited from too, because the wintertime she gets depressed, sit in her own house, and she doesn't eat.
Sure.
Now she's eating her food. So I mean, then that was just one tip I got from a video. So.
Well, and I think with the recent scare of all the different pet products. I mean, you heard about the recall that they were having, I'm sure.
I had some actually. My dog, she had one of those chew sticks. It was supposed to be salmon flavored. And I give it to her. I mean, I thought it was from a cleared list because it's made in the U.S. This one was.
Yeah.
And she got sicker she got sick. It means she got sicker,
Sicker
as
than
a
a dog.
I mean, it passed real quickly, thank
Yeah.
God. But yeah, she vomited several times over it and stuff like that. So that I threw everything away, all those doggy treats away.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, and it was a really, if you looked at the recall, it was a wide span of products. It was dog food and then, like you said, doggy treats, and through a multitude of different brands that were recalled. So I think people are getting more into self-treating their animals, self-feeding their animals, and you certainly can make something that's just as healthy as what comes in the dog food bag. I mean, I think a lot of people probably rely on that just for the simplicity of it,
Yeah,
maybe a
convenience.
cost factor or a time factor. But at any rate, taking your dog's or your pet's health into your own hands is something you should probably consider since you're its master.
yeah, this one's 12 years old. I got, and I mean, I like to keep her around for another 12 years if I could,
Yeah.
And so yeah, I'm definitely concerned about her health. I mean, you brought that in. I remember just watching that video last night, and I just tried to have not even a teaspoon of olive oil, dribble in her food, and I mix it up.
Mm-hmm.
She devoured it, just right down to the bottom of the bowl.
Well, I've actually heard from one of our members. This person had a dog in the family for quite some time. It was well aged, 12, 13-year-old animal, and it was dying from cancer. They were able to give it some edible form of cannabis and at least alleviate its suffering throughout the end stage of its life. And the patient testified that animal made some significant improvements, within 24 hours of ingesting this medical form. The dog was previously vomiting and not moving around, very lethargic. And then after ingesting it, was moving around, playing in the backyard like a healthy animal would. So certainly, I mean, it has some positive effects. And if your dogs, cats, they can become sort of like part of the family. And a lot of people treat them that way, and certainly understandable. So you don't want to see them suffering. And just like anyone would, if you have a pet, it's end stage of life, or it's just suffering from a certain accident or a type of ailment, you want to do whatever you can to try to treat it. So I think it's natural for people to look for different alternatives if they maybe have gone to the vet or not finding the relief for their pet that they want to. They're going to try and do something that's going to help them out. I mean, like if you have a dog that isn't eating and here it is. You give it the same old kibble or whatever, and it doesn't want it. How long is it going to be before you try to give it some human food? I just want you to eat something, little guy. So I think it's natural. And talking about CB receptors, this was a story I wanted to share. This was a new study that cannabinoids promote healthy placental development and promote positive pregnancy outcomes. This was from the National Institute of Health. It was published online. And it was evidence suggesting that proper cannabinoid signaling can lead to healthy placental development during pregnancy and overall a good pregnancy outcome. So I won't get into the science too heavily here, but basically that signals generated by the CB1 and CB2 receptors increase the capacity and the activities in the cells, and were only reversed by CB2 antagonists. So the blockage of these transporters definitely had negative effects. And what the researchers are basically telling us is that having that positive cannabinoid production inside of the body, and this is natural cannabinoid production, go on, leads to having or helping in a positive, healthy pregnancy. So kind of interesting there. I mean, obviously, you could advocate that the use of cannabis helps those CB1 and CB2 projectors inside the body, but just having it produced naturally by the body and having it not being inhibited helps with healthy development of the placenta. So kind of interesting here. I mean, I've had a lot of people ask questions. Recently had my wife was pregnant here not too long ago, and had a lot of people asking questions about, what do you think about cannabis use during pregnancy? And my response was, I think we need more research. We need to find out what the effect is, and so on and so forth. But this information here from the National Institute of Health, it's not saying or advocating cannabis use during pregnancy, but what it is saying is that your body has a natural ability inside with the CB1, CB2 receptors to produce its own cannabinoids. They're called endocannabinoids, and when that's functioning correctly, then that helps out with the pregnancy. So And there's been other studies you could relate, and it would be up to you to make that decision, but where people who do use cannabis, it will help increase those CB receptors to do their job, in a sense, and help produce what it is that the body needs. But at any rate, kind of interesting. I mean, I guess you'd have to have, like I say, I think we need more studies to find out what the effect is. Like I said, I'm certainly not advocating use during pregnancy. I think that's something you have to discuss with your doctor. I know the doctors that we discussed it with said no, and I think that that's a wise thing to say. I think the body should have the ability to produce what it needs if you're giving it the proper nutrition, rest, and so forth. But I don't know. Maybe this could lead to more information. I think we'd like to see more. That's for sure. All right, I have another article here. This was about Washington State. There was a RAND study that came out this last week, and you all know RAND. They're a pretty big firm, well respected. They came out and their projections for consumption across Washington State was double the amount that was originally projected. Kind of interesting there. And this is for recreational use, Washington being one of the states that passed legalization back this last year. And the RAND report is saying, well, they're doubling the amount that was previously projected for the demand of marijuana in that state. Pretty amazing. I guess you'd have to check that out more. But I don't know. I think it's hard to predict something that you haven't had before, obviously. What the actual use is going to be, total, and so forth. They already had medical marijuana available in the state, and they're expecting a large increase. So, interesting. I mean, obviously it's going to increase, but... All right, I got one more article here I wanted to share with you before we get into some other stuff. This was on hemp.org, and this was a study that found that states that had medical marijuana laws passed, that they had found no increase in teen use. So I thought that was an interesting statistic that came out, and I want to share that with you guys. It's certainly a concern, something we've heard advocates, or adversaries, I should say, of medical marijuana come out and say, well, we need to make sure this isn't getting into the wrong hands, and, medical marijuana is a gateway for increased use among teens. And this study here is saying otherwise, that no, states that have medical marijuana passed have not seen an increase in teen use. So another urban legend put to rest. So that's a good thing. All right, and our neighbors to the south, Florida. You guys have been hearing about this. I think they're calling it the Silver Tour. But what they're trying to do is get medical marijuana passed in the state of Florida. And it looks like they've got ballot language posted, but they're waiting for the Supreme Court down there in Florida to make up their minds if it's going to be clear enough for the voters to decide. The deadline for the ballot is coming up here shortly, and it looks like they might have an opportunity to get this on the ballot here next year. However, the advocates for getting this passed are running up against the deadline, and they've got to get through the bureaucracy, basically, to get it on the ballot in time. So we'll have to see. They're coming down to the wire. So we'll see if the Florida people get their medical marijuana or not. All right, there was a court case here passed in Oakland County, and this was regarding the Caruthers, Earl Caruthers. This is the same Caruthers that had the previous decision about medical marijuana being ruled by the Court of Appeals as not being usable. But he was also involved in another case. This was charges involving money laundering, conspiracy to deliver marijuana, 3 counts of delivery, possession with intent to deliver, all pretty big felonies. And basically this case here in Oakland County, this was dismissed yesterday by the judges. Now there was an interesting thing. This gentleman, Earl Caruthers, had opened up a dispensary, if you will. I'm not sure what it was called. I think the name of the place was called Green and Greener Grow Collective. It's being labeled as a dispensary in the paper. But at any rate, this was part of an investigation back here last year, and a raid was conducted by Oakland County law enforcement officers and the narcotics team. But part of what happened during the raid, officers had forged paperwork forged identification, forged an application form to the state, and then also had a forged something that had made up to show that they had a cleared, I guess like a cleared check. Let me see if I can find the details on this. But at any rate, to gain entry into the Green and Greener collective that Earl Carruthers was in charge of, they had forged application paperwork and had a fake driver's license and also had a fake cash check. That's what it was, from the state of Michigan, showing that they had received the application. So basically they had tried to subvert the system here, create their own information, and use that to gain entry into the collective. So once they were in the collective, then they were able to make transfers from the collective to themselves for medical marijuana, which then in turn came back on Mr. Carruthers as drug charges. And so the case yesterday was in court, and it looks like that basically boiled down to really what was deemed as entrapment. The defense attorneys had argued that the transfer was not to a real patient, but it was because of the fact that they had created, all of this fake information. So the operators of the facility were operating in good faith that these were in fact authentic, legitimate documents that the patient had provided, that the person was in fact a patient, and however that the person was not a patient. They had forged everything, and then this was used in order to try to create a conviction or a charge against these people operating this. But kind of interesting here, the previous decision by the Supreme Court from a different court case was that a patient must have obtained a physician's statement at least before getting their medical marijuana, and of course that's the law. No shock there. But in this case here, the officers had gone out and created this fake information to gain entry to the operation, and then use that to turn around and try to prosecute the person for doing so. So really, I don't see how you could have much more clear case of entrapment, and thankfully that's what the courts did rule, that this was a principle of entrapment, and so the case was dismissed. Now, Oakland County prosecutors are looking to appeal this decision, so we'll have yet to see how this will play out, if it will be accepted by the appeals court, so on and so forth. But at any rate, at this time, the case has been dismissed against the defendant, Mr. Carruthers. So kudos to him. Looks like he was trying to do things the right way. And, when you have law enforcement subvert the system and then turn back around, it's kind of like putting up a fake speed limit sign saying, the speed limit's 100 miles an hour and somebody goes 100. You turn around and tell them, that was a fake sign. You were breaking the law. Clearly it's entrapment. But at any rate, this is still a sort of a sad situation. Mr. Carruthers is still trying to appeal his other case that involved the medical marijuana, the edible form of it, his brownies. He's trying to appeal that to the state Supreme Court. So I have yet to see how that goes. But and right now he's also in this here. But at least this part of it has been dismissed at this time. Kind of an interesting case there, and I'm shocked, really. I think that it just blows my mind that they would try to do that. So at any rate, the attorneys were Jim Amberg and David Rudoy. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. They were the defense attorneys, and also Michael Comorn. So kudos to those attorneys for doing a good job and working here, getting justice served. Definitely appreciate the hard work they put into this. And it still blows my mind that this was that was the case. You'd think that the people that are doing this right, obviously he was trying to check identification. Mr. Carruthers was trying to make sure the application was valid, making sure that the state had received it. It was in process. And
how could he tell that was a forgery? Or how could he tell that? If especially when law enforcement does it, they probably have access to the real equipment. They can make it look very legal.
Well, yeah, they had a fake driver's license for one. That's certainly not something you would think would be easy to come by.
So they're using a level of to prosecute these people, a level of expectations from them that they themselves would suspend if it was dealing with a municipality. If you weren't presented your license to say a police department or whatever, or some place where you had to show ID for it, and you presented a forged license, they'd look at it if it had all the seals and bells and whistles on it. They'd let you fly with it.
Yeah,
So,
and, like a fake cashed check.
Right.
And it's not exactly something that would be easy to forge. I've often wondered about applications myself because of the simplicity to the application. You're looking for a physician's signature. You're looking to see that the physician has properly filled out the form, that he's made his notes and comments, that it's properly dated, that there's a license number on the application, and so on and so forth.
Do they require a DEA number on that too from the physician?
They do require the physician's license number,
Okay.
and those are public information, so you can verify that and make sure that this is a legitimate physician number. But I don't know what extent they were doing that. I mean, if you receive someone's application, you see, hey, the doctor has signed this, they've checked off the conditions, they've made notes as to what the conditions are, they've filled out all their information, they've given an address of the place of their business, and so on and so forth, phone number. I mean, you're going to think that that's pretty legit.
You did due diligence, yeah.
Yeah, and going above and beyond that, checking the person's ID to make sure that this is the person that this application belongs to, making sure that the ID is valid, that it's also not expired. Simple things like that layman's people are going to be doing, to actually be able to identify that this is a fake ID. That's something different. Obviously, if they pull out a Sam's Club card or something that's not official, state recognized identification, but here we are presenting a driver's license in this case, a cashed check. That the people that were working at the center deemed to be valid, however it was fake. These are all things that took extensive work to create, and it seems to me that the people there were trying to do due diligence and seeing that this person was valid.
With that kind of resources too, these law enforcement people can use the actual equipment to actually create licenses and IDs on. Gee, no wonder that person accepted it. Probably looked pretty damn legitimate.
Sure, I imagine they probably did a good job of making sure that fake driver's license looked real.
So I mean, it just got, all the stuff I've heard lately from coming out of the police departments across this country, like beatings and shootings, they've engaging in heavy-handed tactics. It just makes it that much more harder for me to even have any respect for any law enforcement officer out there. It really does. Because I don't know if you've read it, Jeremy, but there's a lot of attacks going on civilians around the country. Brutal attacks. People get murdered by police officers.
Well, that's a scary thing. You think as a regular citizen that they're going to be there to help protect you, help uphold the law, and I guess in this case here, this is really disheartening because they're subverting the law, purposely to try to create a conviction or a charge. And especially if these people at the Green and Greener Collective, they were doing their jobs. They were trying to make sure that the patients they dealt with were legitimate patients, that they had sent in their application, that they had gone to the doctor, and here they are, being presented with false information that was probably, like you're saying, put together pretty well. That would pretty much, fool anyone that was looking at it. It's a disheartening thing there. So I'm glad this case was dismissed. I think it's definitely justice served. And, kudos to the Caruthers team there, the attorney team and so forth, being able to get that executed. Mind-blowing. And I guess I think about the law being passed, the gist of it. People voted on this, they passed this so that folks who need this as a medication would have a valid way of being able to actually get that. And here they are, they're doing it the right way, and then you have law enforcement abusing the system to try to get in underneath and create something out of nothing. I think that's the sad part. You'd think that once they went in and saw that they were properly verifying all the information and doing things the right way, that they would have left them alone. But to go back and then turn around and try to create a crime out of it, man, that's just mind-blowing. So I guess we'll have to see. But at any rate, now the case has been dismissed. I think that's a good thing. So kudos to these folks here for having to go through that process, but at least justice was served. All right, let's see if I got anything else for you this week. I think that's about it. Pull up one more thing here. Check out our Toke of the Town. All right, this is from, like I said, tokeofthetown.com. This is a story out of Chicago saying here the Chicago doctor could face a suspended or repealed medical license after the state regulatory board accused him of taking fees for pre-approval of medical marijuana consultations with patients even before the program is underway. Dr. Brian Murray is charging patients a $99 fee for an initial clinical visit needed to establish a legitimate relationship. Sound familiar? As required under Illinois law. According to the Department of Financial and Professional Regulation filed Monday, the fee is misleading and falls under state medical malpractice laws. Unlike some states, Illinois law does not allow for medical cannabis clinics or practices that exist solely to offer cannabis certifications. The department said in a prepared statement that they would want to make sure patients who truly benefit from the relief of medical cannabis are not misled and physicians are not violating the law. Let's see here. It says the complaint continues with allegations that Murray's Good Intentions Clinic didn't even have filing cabinets to store patient records, and the exam rooms didn't even have exam tables or any other discernible medical equipment. There was an inflatable mattress allegedly found in one room. The manager of the clinic, Daniel Reed, said the complaints were baseless and false. So, interesting here. Reed, Daniel Reed, the manager of the clinic, said that his office is sparsely furnished, yes, but that doesn't mean legitimate exams aren't being conducted. Reed also says there hasn't been any follow-up appointments yet because the medical marijuana dispensary laws haven't taken effect yet. So,
if you go by that logic behind that charge that there wasn't a legitimate medical equipment, then a paramedic examining somebody on the ground after a car accident can also say they're not examining them on a proper equipment. It's just, this is getting asinine. You know what I mean? It really is.
Well, I think they're kind of pushing obviously the state is kind of pushing back here. This gentleman opens up a clinic. He's deeming it as the Good Intentions Clinic. Yeah, that's the name of the place, Good Intentions Clinic. I don't know. I mean, if they have a law there that says they can't have medical marijuana clinics or doctors specializing in medical marijuana, the law is what the law is. I don't know was he making any other types of recommendations to his patients. Was he writing prescriptions? What type of exams was he performing? So on and so forth. Definitely seems like somebody at the state level is making a statement there saying, hey, this kind of thing isn't going to go on. But I don't know. I mean, I guess somebody has to develop a relationship and they're going to want to try to get a medical marijuana recommendation from a doctor. They probably should go and talk to a doctor now, and not wait until the last minute. I mean, if they really feel that they need the medication. So, kind of a catch-22 there for patients and doctors in the state of Illinois. Maybe this guy was a little too aggressive. Maybe he ruffled some feathers. Who knows? But you would think that they're just going in. He's not making an actual recommendation for cannabis yet. He's just simply talking to patients about it. He's just starting to establish a relationship with patients. I mean, maybe the fact that he's charging fees for doing so, I don't know. I mean,
only politicians can do stuff like that. How dare you get that corner our market?
Yeah. I'm not sure. So, unfortunately, it looks like they're going to have a little bit of a pushback there in the state of Illinois. And the problem is I'm sure just like in Michigan here, you have a lot of physicians that are under networks and so on that just simply refuse to talk to their patients about medical marijuana, and to go as far as to make a recommendation, that's just simply out of the picture. So places do need to sort of cater to specific medical marijuana use. And, if you don't have doctors that are familiar with it, how it can be used or how it can affect someone or how it can help someone, and your current physician is unwilling to talk to you about it, it does kind of lead to a patient wanting to go to a place that's going to specialize in it. I mean, nowadays, specialization is the name of the game when it comes to medical treatment. I mean, whether it be a heart issue, lung issue, or whatever, and 9 times out of 10, when you go to a doctor for a specific ailment, they're going to refer you out to a specialist. And it seems like not allowing this to happen in the medical marijuana field seems sort of backwards. Especially if you have a physician that says, that might really help you out from what I've read, but I'm not an expert in it. However, I can't make you a referral to any place that is. No place is allowed to exist to do that.
I wonder how this is going to pan out during under Obamacare. any of this. They're restrictive about everything. So I mean,
well, so far we haven't really found. I mean, across the nation, I haven't seen medical marijuana being covered by insurance policies. Whether it be disability policies or just insurance health policies. I haven't seen any insurers step up. And in fact, we had a bill here passed through the legislature and being passed around back a couple years ago, where it was specific that medical marijuana could not be covered by certain health policies, or I think it was in this case by a disability policy. So I don't think it's something that insurance companies are looking to step up and start to cover. I mean, that's one more expense for them, and they don't really want to pay claims out. This is not what helps them stay in business. So to add on additional expenses that someone could now deduct, it's probably not a good thing. But like I said, across the nation, we haven't really seen insurance companies be involved in this. From a health perspective, especially when someone's using this to treat, different types of ailments, and they do have expenses that are associated with their medical marijuana use, whether it be acquiring the medication itself or setting up a facility so that they can produce the medication for themselves. I mean, these expenses are not being covered by insurance, and so I don't think that that's going to necessarily happen just because Obamacare came through. I don't think he's looking to expand coverage in that regard. However, if you have your current coverage, you can keep it, right?
Yeah, and I would have called, when people did what he did when I was a kid, that was called a lie, and we got really irked by people doing that. There's no reaction for him doing that bullface lie, but that's editorializing. It does not reflect the Compassion Club's views or anybody else's but mine, but...
All right. It's just John. Pay no attention. No, I mean, I think that... I know what you're saying, John. This is one of those issues. A lot of people are upset
repeated
about
it
that.
several times. You'll get to keep it. Well, and then, no, you won't. If you don't like your coverage, you won't be able to keep it. If you're satisfied with it, it doesn't matter. Prince Obama hasn't, give his stamp of approval on, or King Obama. Again, my personal opinion, but.
Yeah. All right. Just one more quick word about the House bills that we talked about last week. They did pass through the House. This was Bill 4271. Talked about the House Bill, 4271, which is the, I can't even spit it out right now. It's the local option bill for, I don't want to call them dispensaries, but that's here. This is from the state's website. But they call them local distribution centers. I think that's probably a better word for it. At any rate, that bill did pass the House. It has yet to go through the Senate, which it will need to go through the Senate in order to become law. Also, House Bill 5104, that had even greater support, but that also passed the House on a 100-9 vote, and that will also need to go through the Senate. That was the bill to have specific verbiage that would provide the clarity needed so that people would have further protection for medibles, and they're calling it the marijuana edibles bill. So this would be other forms of marijuana, medical marijuana, other than the dried flower. Currently it's protected by part of the law, but not all of it, according to the Carruthers decision that went through. This bill here, if it were to pass, would now have specifics laid down in legislation to clear that up.
Okay, so what was the number of that bill?
5104. So both of those bills passed through the House. They do need to go through the Senate in order to have a chance at becoming law. The other bill that has passed the House was the Senate Bill 660. This was for the pharmaceuticals. That also passed through. That had already passed through the Senate previously. So now this would be headed up to the governor for him to sign off. Not sure if he will sign off on that or when it will be headed to his desk. But at any rate, it has gone through the legislation in the House and the Senate and was passed.
And that's one like actually creating one supplier for all patients, right?
Yeah, this is a program that would run parallel to the Michigan Medical Marijuana Program as we know it. It would provide an alternative. It would not be it would not rule out the current system, but it does rely on the federal government rescheduling marijuana before it can become active. So we have yet to see if that would have any gaining ground here in the future. I know that recently GW Pharmaceuticals was granted permission to develop a patent for their product, Sativex, which has already been on the market for years over in the UK and Canada, and also another separate product called Epidiolex. Both of these are sprays that are done through the mouth. One is containing an even amount of THC and CBD, and the other one, the Epidiolex, is simply just a CBD with no THC in it. So kind of the opposite of Marinol, which is a THC-only pill form that's currently available in the United States. So those patents have just been granted, or patent-seeking application process has been granted to GW Pharmaceuticals. So it may be a few years here, and you may possibly see the federal rescheduling of marijuana at some level. The interesting question I have in this situation is that this bill, Senate Bill 660, which passed and requires marijuana to be rescheduled, at least down to a Schedule 2, and I think that the likelihood of the rescheduling of marijuana is more likely that you would see compounds of marijuana be rescheduled and not the plant matter itself. And I think if you look at companies like GW, which are developing compound forms of this and then not using the whole plant matter when giving it to their patients, I think it's likely to see that that's what would be rescheduled rather than the entire plant. So what you might see is, THC itself, or maybe a CBD only product in a certain form, would be allowed or rescheduled, but not the plant itself. That might stay Schedule 1. So if Prairie Plant Systems is providing their medication to their patients in plant form, would that still negate this Senate Bill 660 that was just recently passed? I know that the Prairie Plant Systems is providing the plant matter to patients in Canada in plant form. So if their intention was to do the same thing here in Michigan, it would rely on the rescheduling of our federal government of marijuana, the plant matter, to be rescheduled as well. So lots of different options there on the table, none of them being done currently. So I think it's also interesting that this was the first bill to be passed through in this legislative session, even though it's sort of lofty. I really don't see, they have no way to enact it currently, but even when it is, if it is enacted in the future, supposedly it's to run alongside this program. So patients would have a choice, and they could either stay with the current program or relinquish their rights in the current program and then choose to be able to acquire their cannabis through pharmacies, i.e. Prairie Plant Systems. So, but at any rate, that's the news for that. Wanted to share about the bills going through. They still need your support in the Senate. That's House Bill 5104 and House Bill 4271. Those are both passed the House legislature, and they will now go through the Senate. So if you like those bills and you want to support them, call your state senator and talk to them about that. That's about it for this week's news. I just want to share those items with you. I hope that everybody out there has a Merry Christmas this year, and I hope you have time to spend with your family. Wish you a healthy one and a Happy New Year, of course. Look forward to a lot of different exciting things coming up in 2014 for medical marijuana across the state. And, of course, a lot of exciting things happening down at the Genesee County Compassion Club. Again, if you can stop by on Friday and join us at our Christmas celebration, we'd love to have you down there. And definitely appreciate being here with you, John, in the studios at Flint Talk Radio. Another successful year, 2013, and just glad to be here with you and glad to be here in the wonderful state of Michigan. So thanks, everybody, for being with us. Appreciate your support and look forward to being back here next year in 2014 on Flint Talk Radio and the Genesee County Compassion Club show. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good one.